like the bookend of the one I just did a little while ago, because you remember the two objectives was first build quality into the product and process. And now this one is launch lean. Some of you that have had experience with lean know that most of the time we take something that's already been put out there and do what's called a Kaizen event on it to come up with the leanest way to improve that process. What we're doing here is with 3P is putting lean into the development process. So not only are we using advanced product quality planning to build quality in, but we're also using 3P to launch lean. So let's see. To start with, for those of you that may not know what lean is, the term lean was coined to describe Toyota's business during the late 1980s by James Womack and his team. And you'll see one of his books that he and Daniel Jung, Lean Thinking, that we use for one of our courses. This is one of the course books. Simply, lean methods create more value for customers with fewer resources. The ultimate goal or the ideal situation is to have no waste or have a perfect value to the customer and zero waste. Well, we know that that's a continual improvement process because we know that we can't eliminate all waste. But the goal is to always be moving towards having less and less waste in our systems. So what does this mean for the guitar line? Eliminating waste along the entire value stream instead of at isolated points. It creates processes that need less human effort, less space, less capital, less time to make the products and services at far less cost and with much fewer defects. Now this is compared, if you're using lean, you start to gain the economies of doing this, but typically we're talking about 95% of what we do in a manufacturing process is waste. So there's huge opportunities for it. And especially when we're talking about space conservation, because a lot of you mentioned as you've done your presentation how you had difficulties with the amount of workspace that you had. Well, we have that same problem in San Diego because the floor tiles in there might as well be made out of gold. That's how much it costs for floor space in San Diego. So portable, what does portable mean? And when we talk about portable lean methodologies, since lean methods optimize the use of resources and equipment and facilities, smaller machines can be used in smaller places. So it's the reason why we're using tabletop. A lot of our shops already have large, like for instance, shown this bandsaw here. I think the one we were using in Laramie was taller than I was. So they can be a lot bigger. When they're small, they can be moved around, changeover can happen quickly, and all these tools that we use as part of our process are that way. Here's another picture of the 250 class, this isn't everybody there, but most of them were there when we had our jam session. We took this picture during with our jam session on the 250 last spring. But again, the goals were advanced product quality planning, and then, as I told you before, and then launch lean guitar building operation using production preparation process. Well, we already have a course called Lean Manufacturing where we use the Lean Bronze Resource Kit, which has lean thinking, lean simplified by Pascal Dennis, and this Gemba Kaizen and Learning to See out of the Lean Institute. These are really great books when you're trying to lean out any process, and they can be used on anything. We also added to that course 3P, the power of 3P, which is what we're really talking about here. How do we implement that? So the first thing we did was ask the question about waste. Because once we know who the customer is, and the customer in this case was who? The luthier, right? The luthier is the customer. So once we understand it's for us, we want to make sure that we're not using a wasteful process or one that creates defects. Well, we've already talked about that, but we're just going to go around this circle here of the 7 types of waste and talk about them in terms of the guitar. Paul Taiociano says that we don't want to overproduce. That is, produce more than is needed. So we should produce only what is needed when it's needed. Well, that's not really a problem for the guitars at this point because we're working from kits. But movement, on the other hand, is an opportunity. This is where you transport guitar bodies and necks around the shop, going from shop to shop. If you've ever saw, how many have ever seen a spaghetti diagram? We had a spaghetti diagram that we did when I was at General Motors for one of our tail lamps because we kept getting dinged. It was a Buick Crosscar. We kept getting dinged by when we were trying to win quality awards because of the scratches on the component. And we found out that that thing went 8.3 miles through our factory before it got out the door. So there's all kinds of opportunity for failure when you don't have a process where it's has a very straight path out the door, at least one loop or a horseshoe to make it happen. Inventory is another thing we want to minimize. So not only do we only want to carry the necessary guitars that we're building, but also the processing equipment and the materials that we use like sandpaper, paint, and stuff like that. The next one is pour processing. And some of you know we've talked about not doing enough sanding, but sometimes I get a little bit eager, like Doug is saying, and saying too much. And I think Tom was saying in one of the videos where it had this neck where the guy had just completely sanded down to his neck to almost it's nothing. So we don't want to over-process. And then there's waiting, waste of waiting. And here's a real opportunity because we're waiting for machines or we're waiting for tools. Somebody else is using them and I can't get them, so I'm waiting. And then defects is the sixth one. No rework or repair loops. In other words, that's the whole idea of designing in work, but also making it lean means that it's going to go straight through the system. It doesn't really have a chance to get somewhere where it shouldn't be and therefore get damaged. And the last one is motion. And this is talking about the luthier himself, wasted motion by the luthier. So you don't want to be hunting down tools or materials. So having everything you need at the station that you're working on is important. And there are a couple others. This is all called Muda by Toyota. There's a couple other terms called Mura and Murai. And those stand for difficult and uneven. So we don't want processes to be difficult for the luthier to make the process. If it's difficult, a lot of times mistakes are made. Or if it's uneven, then the ebb and flow of unevenness causes problems for quality and productivity as well. Then the other thing we asked was, how can we make improvements in life? In other words, how are we going to measure our improvements to our lean system? And life stands for lead time reduction. What you want to do with any process is shorten the amount of time it takes for the product or service to get through a process. So what we measure here is the total guitar cycle time, from the time it starts into the process to the time it finishes, as short as possible. And then inventory reduction we've already talked about, the amount of work in process. We try to keep the shop floor clean so that we can easily see how things are processing through the shop floor. And then floor space and travel reduction are also a couple of things we want to do. Reduce the square feet of floor space, or in this case, normally in a production situation, we balance a line and then all of you would be sitting on a line doing one product and passing to the next person. Well, nobody wants a guitar that was built by the whole group. They want to build their own guitars. So the way we built it was so that you just go from station to station with your guitar and neck until you finish the process. But everything's there at the station you need. And we want as few steps as possible. Then an E stands for efficiency, the total number of hours per guitar per person. And quality is either first-time quality or rolled throughput yield, and cost is the total cost of the completed guitar, including all that goes into it as far as the paint and so forth and what you have. So how do we do this? How do we make guitars flow through the assembly process? Well, instead of having just a job shop set up, what we came up with was 3 flow lines that can be quickly changed over through 6 phases. That means that 5 or 6 luthiers on each line. And usually what we do is try to put the people that have the most experience with building or doing woodworking and stuff and put them at the front end of the lines. We also have workbenches that allow you to go up and down, so we can put the taller people on one line and the shorter people on another line and make it more comfortable for them to work through the process. And at the beginning, you have people waiting to get on the lines, but there's also these MLAs that we're doing, so they can be doing those until it's their turn to actually go into the shop. And the first ones that come off the line, they can return to the computers to finish working through an assessment or lesson plan. We did time studies to balance the lines across the lines so that we have about the same amount of work online. That's not real easy to do because some of it's very some of the process is very labor intensive, but as much as possible, we're trying to divide that up to make that smooth. Also reduce the movement of guitars in waiting and for searching tools, because you're just going from one station to the next. All the tools are there that you need for each station. It reduces the lead time, the steps traveled, the hours per guitar, and it improves quality. And then finally, it facilitates an even flow of guitar production without overproducing. Even though we get kids, you'll always find there's be somebody that's just raring to do the next thing. And the way we have it set up this way, you don't have that road guy going out there and tearing up his guitar because he really doesn't have anywhere to do that at, because we have the lines set up for what processes are supposed to be. So this is what the current state value stream map would look like for our process, because it has 6 phases. And really these phases are a lot like the phases for when you went through your workshop. We spent about a half a day working on these things, each one of these things for 5 days. And so the phases divide up pretty much that way. And then of course they end with the jam sessions. So 15 luthiers with 15 guitars this semester, and expected about a 20-hour total cycle time. Another thing that what we were looking for is a way to make things easier to do and less difficult. Simple jigs and fixtures to alleviate difficulty and improve the quality and productivity. Like for instance, when we're doing the routering around these edges here on the pocket. We got a pocket jig that we put in there to make it easy so that you don't end up routering off the edge too tightly when you run the router on it. And here's one that's real simple. That it's just we've got 3 of the StuMac guitar vices, but we're using them on the line, and we also needed to be able to clamp the guitar neck, so we just take 2 pieces of 2x4 and just screw them together and then clamp them on the edge of the table. And you can see that he's using to put his edge fret dots on there, but it can also be used for sanding down that edge. Once you have the frets on it, you can also use it to file the frets off. And then of course the last one here is a wiring fixture. And you can see this one of the students in the last semester came up with. That it has the components apart so that they're about the right length for the wires, and it shows you how the wiring diagram on it, so that you can just simply follow the wiring diagram to make your circuit. The last thing that I'll show you is workplace organization and visual control, and this is something we're just now implementing. We went for the 2nd year. They bought the tools for us last year, and we actually lost one of these files, one of these fret files, and that dude is $47. So we don't want to lose one of those. So we're putting together these shadow boards, and so you can see where everything is. When you go to the workstation, it has everything that you need at the workstation, and in order to do the job. And then what you see over here is when we get ready to change over from phase to phase. We have these tool carts that we've got, and we just simply put the phase 3 in the tool cart and get the phase 4 out. Wow. And then lock them up at the end. They can slide underneath the workbenches. So we go back to what Womack is saying. The lean journey is a continual journey. To define value in terms of the customer, the luthier is the customer. Remove waste from the value stream using lead time reduction, movement reduction, travel reduction, etc. Make the guitars and the information flow through the value stream, and allow the guitars to be pulled along the value stream instead of pushing. Continually pursue perfection because the journey never ends. So what are the benefits? Reduction of lead time or total guitar building cycle time. Guitars travel straight down the assembly line, no forks, no loops. We use balanced flow lines to reduce waiting for tools and equipment. No need to move around searching for tools or materials at the workbench. Floor space is optimized using reducing overhead costs. The number of steps are reduced, minimizing the number of defects. Jigs and fixtures are used to enhance quality and alleviate difficulty. Shadow fixtures, organized and control tools, and facilitate changeover. And then all the tools and equipment can be easily loaded up if you need to take them somewhere, like we're talking about maybe working with some high schools that don't have the equipment in there, or even going to some of the corporate businesses. We can actually just take everything and go there and do the workshop. We haven't done that yet, but that's something we're definitely thinking about. Any questions? All three hands went up all at once.
So I want
Christina.
to know about the collaboration, because that looks incredible. And you know, all of the charts, and I think the fluidity of all of the documentation is good. But I want to know who was with you when you started building all of this.
Okay, this stuff was come up with, of course, I was lead in class, but this stuff came up in the capstone course, and those students had already been through lean manufacturing course and a Six Sigma and lean implementation course, so they were doing this as a project. So, and that's the other thing too, is you know, this semester I'm teaching the guitar building workshop. Next semester I'm going to have the lean manufacturing. And we're going to try to coincide those so we can go in and do the time studies while the other course is working at the same time, so that we can continually learn on that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I took my students to the Martin factory, but one of the things they had there, and I'd like to do, you could do it with Post-its, but that would be a bad way to do it, but you could do a little magnetic thing, because there was like a whiteboard and had each guitar that was in the shop being worked on, and at what stage it was in the process. And every time they would have you know, the guitar would be in a certain process, it would have that up there to keep track, so you knew exactly where each guitar was in the chain, you know. So if you came in the shop and you looked at it, you go, okay, this guitar here needs this, and you know exactly what to do. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, kind of like a hygienic box or organizer.
Yeah,
To actually
a
see
flow
what
chart
you're
thing,
doing.
yeah.
Familiar with Paul Akers? He's founded a company called FastCat.
Oh, yeah.
He's all about this stuff. He's got some really entertaining videos that anybody can understand. I think students especially.
And this can be applied to anything. Of course, they're getting to apply it when they're making their stem guitar, just to see how it works, especially when you go back to study. But having that kind of thing like that says, look, this applies to anything, not just manufacturing. Any service or any product that's produced could use lean technology.
Fast cat.
FastCat.
FastCat.
He's in Washington.